As teachers, we're often told just build relationships as if that's going to solve all of our classroom management and other classroom problems. But that is not enough in and of itself. We talk about why and what we need to do in addition in this episode. Well, welcome back to the Teach for the Heart podcast, where we tackle teaching challenges from a biblical perspective. This episode is brought to you in partnership with the Herzog Foundation. I'm here today again with Sarah Humes, one of our Teach for the Heart team members and Teach for the Heart Plus mentors. Sarah, thanks for being with us again.
Thanks for having me.
So we wanted to talk today about why building relationships is not by itself fixing all our classroom problems. Because as we continue to talk and work with teachers, we notice that this advice teachers get a lot. Now we do believe in building relationships. That's really important. We can talk about that. But why do you think this has become just the end all be all advice? And why is that not enough? That's what we're going to dive into. What comes to your mind, Sarah?
Well, I think that is such an important piece of advice because it is foundational. And honestly, I wonder if it's become such a highlighted piece of advice because we live in a world that kind of skips over relationships. You know, we're very much online, we're very much tech oriented. And I just wonder if that's why it's being highlighted so much more right now.
Yeah, that might be. And I think too about pendulum swings, right? Like there might have been a time where it's a recognition that like, wow, teachers aren't building enough of a relationship. And I completely agree. Like that's not good if we don't have relationships.
Mhm.
But then sometimes things like that tend to pendulum swing where now it's like, all you have to do is build relationships. And it's like such a focus. And that's what we're picking at is we don't believe that just by itself is going to be enough to create a conducive learning environment, right? If all you do is build relationships, then it's probably not going to be enough. Sarah, have you ever experienced that in your classroom?
Yeah, because I'm a highly relational person and I actually love building relationships with my students, all of them, even the ones that might drive other teachers crazy. But if I build my relationships with them, but I don't have an established plan or procedures in place or, things like that, my my first couple years, my classroom was chaos because I had great relationships with my students, but my classroom was a mess.
Right, right. Because, we kind of talked about this before in a previous episode when we talked about what are some of the differences between parenting and teaching. And we said you don't have just one or two or even four students you're dealing with. You're standing in front of a class of 20, 25, 30 students. And just because they like you doesn't necessarily mean that they are going to respect your authority,
Right.
that they're going to listen, that they're going to actually do their work. That requires more than just showing them that you care. Although that is very, very important, right? So yeah, I think this is just something that teachers are a little bit fed up of hearing, right? Kind of tired of hearing just build relationships as if that is all that they have to do because they're doing it. They're trying really hard. They're having
Mhm.
these relationships and then it's still chaos. It's still not great.
Yeah, I mean, when it comes down to it, like, if you think about it, it is I mean, it might arguably be one of the most important parts. Like, I kind of think about it as, like, a foundation, like, of a house, but just because you have the foundation doesn't mean you can live in that house. You don't have any walls, you don't have a roof, it's not functionable.
Right. So I hope you're getting from us build relationships. That's super, super important. I think of a whole story I could tell where, it's like I didn't have a relationship. I went to a kid's game. I mentioned it to him and then that kind of turned things around. So that is not to be underestimated, the power of the relationship. But these other pieces also have to be in place in
Mhm.
order for you to have that calm, conducive learning environment that we need for our students to succeed. So that's why we teach building relationships, but we teach a whole lot more too. And in particular, our 10 commandments of classroom management, which if you missed episode 373, that's a great one to go back and listen to. There's a lot of pieces that we need. So we're going to talk through now what are some of those needed pieces in our classroom management, in addition to just building relationships. And the first one I think of is we need clear expectations. So we need to know where is the line? We need, and I think there's so many times where I think back and I'm like, yeah, I remember a kid putting their head down on the desk and thinking, is that okay? I don't know. Should I say something? Right? Like a lot of times we might think we know what to expect, but we haven't actually defined it. So knowing where is the line, where do I want to hold it? That's kind of the first step.
Yeah, and one of the things I don't know if you ever have found this to be the case, but if you're only running your classroom based on relationships, your expectations would not be clear and the same for every student.
Mm,
And that's if you are trying to run a fair and chaos-free classroom, that that's an issue because you have students that you're closer to and students that you're not. And that would be a real issue. So clarifying your expectations and teaching them explicitly across the board, of course, with the exceptions of those who need them for, 504 or an IEP, that is so powerful, I think. And it gives you confidence in your teaching too. Like this is what I expect and this is what you need to do.
right, right. So
Yeah.
having that standard for your classroom and like, okay, we're gonna hold you accountable, right? I
Yeah.
like you, I care about you, but it's that mentor not friend relationship, right? I'm gonna hold you to these expectations, which brings us to another needed piece, which is consistent enforcement, right? And like you were saying, yeah, if it's just based on right, we could get really inconsistent and really unfair kind of quickly if we're not
Yeah.
careful there. So our desire is to be consistent, right? And that means consistent with every student is roughly the same except for intentional deviations, but
Mhm.
also consistent on our mood, right? So we're not just like, oh, I'm feeling good today, everything's fine. I'm in a bad mood, so I'm coming down crazy hard, right? Just saying, okay, I'm going to be consistent, and in that way, we show our students if every time if this is the line and when students cross it, we deal with it the same way. It does not keep any issues from happening. Issues are still going to happen, but students start to realize, okay, I see the line. And it really does diminish the issue. The majority of students will, okay, we'll start to meet those expectations, which is incredibly helpful.
Yeah, and I think that the thing I love about that is we talk so much about being kind and firm, and that's where that lets us do that. If our students know what to expect and we're like, "Okay, this is what we expect, and we're gonna hold you accountable to that." There's no surprises, and students like, "Okay, yeah, I know. This is what you want." And I've seen that time and time again as I've clarified my expectations and held students accountable. There's so much less arguing about, "That's not fair. This is not what," I I've just loved watching the change in my classroom as I've implemented clear expectations.
Yeah, it is really interesting. There's always a lot going on like underneath like subtext to our actions and like this underneath communication. And I think with both kids and teenagers, they would never say, I want someone to really but they do. Like when you're in that when you establish that just consistent, clear expectations, consistent enforcement, students like that. They do. They like that it's safe, it's secure, they know what to expect, they know how to succeed, and it creates an environment where they can actually listen and focus. So, yeah, they might not at first you get sometimes I always, use the analogy of, like, you're fishing, like, when you're reeling in a fish, it's, like, flopping and all so when you first start to make some changes, they're gonna act like this is the end of the world, but once you can establish that, I think it everyone is better and even a little happier for it in the end.
I absolutely agree, and I remember that even from my own days as a student. I loved the teachers who had great order in their classroom. It just made me feel like I could learn better there, so I loved creating that for my own students.
Absolutely. And I think in the end, you respect those teachers a lot, right? And that actually helps the relationship. So sometimes we're afraid I'm going to damage my relationship by holding students accountable. And yeah, there's sometimes that like intermediate space where it's like, oh, we're changing the relationship. But those are the teachers you think back, you're thankful for, you go back and see them. It's really, it's really worth it. This episode is brought to you in partnership with the Herzog Foundation. It's a new year, and that means brand new resources from the Herzog Foundation for Christian Educators. Their full calendar of events is now live at herzogfoundation.connect.space. The Herzog Foundation Institute offers free training events designed specifically for educators like you. In partnership with organizations like Answers in Genesis and the Museum of the Bible, these trainings provide hands on strategies, biblical resources, and practical classroom tools to help you integrate faith and learning every day. And the best part, they are completely free for you and your school or homeschool group. Whether you're looking for fresh inspiration for your classroom or professional development to grow your ministry, the Herzog Foundation is here to help. Find an event near you at herzogfoundation.connect.space. Now back to our conversation. Which brings us to the next piece that I think is needed. So there's probably more than this, but the four things I thought of: clear expectations, consistent enforcement. Number three, consequences. So like we have to be willing to give consequences. And I know this is out of vogue, but it shouldn't be. This is an important piece of our classroom management. It is not the whole thing. It's not the only thing you do, right? But it is a piece that matters, right? Students, there are consequences in life. And so there should be consequences in our classroom, right? If there's a problem that's going on, and once again, the key is consistency, right? I know where and when, and I'm consistent with the consequences. And that just helps everybody learn and grow and ultimately succeed.
Yeah. And personally, I love having this is why I love having the plan written down because I think I may have mentioned this on the podcast before, but I was that teacher that literally had tears in my eyes every single time I had to write a student up or give them a detention. And um it was so hard for me to do that. But it got a lot less difficult because I'd say, you did this, you knew that this was going to occur. This was your consequence, and
Mhm.
it was written, we had already pre-planned it. And that took the pressure off of me. It was no longer an emotional thing, it was transactional. And it was on them. They made the decision, and it was still difficult for me. Um, but it was transactional, and I was just like, I'm sorry that you made the decision, but these are the consequences that we have previously set in place.
Yes, and I can so relate. I think I've shared before too. The first time I had to give a kid a detention, I literally had to call my husband and be like I needed a pep talk. I don't know what I wanted him to do, but I was just like so scared to do it. I so did not want to do it. And I guess it got like a little easier, but honestly, it never got easy for me either. But that's why number four of our needed pieces is a pre-planned response. And when we work with teachers in Classroom Management 101, we have you write down, how am I going to respond to all of these common issues, right? And not everything is right away a consequence, but you plan, where does the consequence fall? And you set it in a place that you're like, this is good and right. In a
Mhm.
like you're deciding in a non-emotional moment, this is where it goes. And so then when you're in the moment, when you're frustrated or scared or you feel bad, you're like, no, I already planned it. Like you said, I'm just following the plan. Everyone knows, everyone's on the same page. And honestly, if I were to not follow it, that wouldn't be right or fair. And so that really helps us be consistent, especially for those of you that, like us, have those little bleeding hearts
Yes,
and
or
struggle
for
a little bit with it.
the teachers that reach out to us that struggle with anger. This is a
Mm,
great way to help diffuse that too. I
yes.
mean, there are all kinds of emotional levels that this helps us. Because I mean, really, the emotional responses, if we're being honest, our students find them funny. They talk about it
Yes.
afterwards. They're like, "Did you see how so and so blew up today? Can we just talk about that?" They do. I've heard them talk about it in my class about other teachers. And I'm like, "Oh, what have they said about me?" You know, "Did you see Mrs. Humes crying again?" And so this helps set it in a better way so that we can do it without the emotionalness and of whatever line it is, whether it's anger or that bleeding heart or, wherever we fall, the annoyance. It just helps us to just deliver it matter of factly.
Right. And I think that is so important when we can deliver consequences calmly and even empathetically.
Yes.
It's not that it doesn't guarantee the student's gonna, like, reflect and learn, but it takes away the distractions, right? When we are either angry or, like, there's something just off in how we go to them, it's like you said, it's very distracting. Instead of being like, "Yeah, I kinda screwed up," they're telling a funny story for the rest of the day, right? And it's a way
Yes.
to deflect and distract them, and so the more we can remove that, it gives a better chance of them actually thinking about, maybe I actually did deserve this, and this is why, and this is what I wanna do differently next time, for sure. Sarah, any kind of final thoughts or advice for teachers on, I mean, like I said, building relationships is so key, right? It helps everything that we're doing. But when you're getting those answers of like that's all, it's okay to recognize no, that's not it. We have to be ready for that practical management aspect of it too. But yeah, any final thoughts that you have as we wrap this one up?
Yeah, one of the things that I've loved about thinking as I've managing my classroom is how much a classroom management plan reflects the gospel and the
Ooh.
Bible. And I just want to encourage teachers to really maybe ponder about that because God loves us. He wants a relationship with us, but he also has a plan and some rules for us and some natural consequences for us. This is not just something human. Like there's a reason we need to have this. And it's for our students' safety and protection. And we build a deeper relationship with them when we are seeking to have a plan in our classroom that will eventually make us closer to them. It's very similar to the gospel if you really dig into it.
Yeah. Oh man, now I wanna do a whole episode just on those connections between classroom management and the gospel, yeah. I do think sometimes that those rules and consequences, I don't know, depending on your background, sometimes it's easy to almost, like, pendulum swing away from those, right? Because some maybe
Yeah.
growing up, we were lacking in grace, right? But recognizing, like, those are God's good gifts to us,
Mhm.
those clear expectations that he gives, and a lot of the purpose of the law was actually to show us where we were wrong, right? To clarify where are we falling short, right? And those rules and consequences, just like in life, like they can't save us, right? The rules, the law, it could never save, but it shows us where we fall short. And honestly, that is exactly what we can do in our classroom with it, right? We're showing students, hey, you're falling short. And we pray that that's actually a step in pointing them to realizing, hey, I do fall short. I need a savior.
Yeah.
Whether you can say that in a Christian school or you can't in a public school, you're still living that out. I think that's actually part of a reason why in the secular world people don't like consequences, right? They don't want that pointed. They don't want pointed out that I fall
Yeah.
short. Like that's the cardinal sin is saying that I'm not enough. But we know as Christians we're not, and that's okay
Right.
because He is. Well, thank you, Sarah, so much for having this conversation. Thank you guys for listening. If you are saying, okay, wow, I want to do some of these things. I want clear expectations. I want consistent reinforcement. I don't know what consequences to use. How do I write a plan? We would love to help you. I have a few resources real quick I want to mention. So first of all, that 10 Commandments of Classroom Management episode is a great place to start. Just hop back up a few episodes to 373. We also have a full playlist that kind of explains it in more detail on YouTube. That's at teachfortheheart.com/playlist, as well as a starter pack that goes with this. You can find all these links in the show notes. And then if you're like, nope, I'm ready, I want your help, Classroom Management 101 is where we walk you through it step by step with wonderful mentors like Sarah and the rest of the team. And so we'd love to help you there. So you can go over and check that out at teachfortheheart.com/CM101. The link will be in the show notes. And if you use the code podcast20, you can save 20% on your enrollment. Well, this episode has been brought to you in partnership with the Herzog Foundation. All views and opinions are our own and don't necessarily reflect those of the Herzog Foundation. Thank you for being with us. We look forward to speaking with you again soon. In the meantime, teachers, remember, God is at work in you and through you, and He's using you to make a difference. Keep your eyes on Him and teach for the heart.